Thomas, you want to leave?
Tom, turn around.
Oh,
Got a nice photo here.
we're gonna put it on Facebook.
Buddy, give me a big smile.
Duck.
Chance, you want to make a comment?
Duck.
One thing we'd like to share with all of you.
Would you step up to the mic because it'll record better?
One thing that we'd like to share with all of you is we were kind of spooked because we were getting close to the end and we weren't really too sure about how many volunteers we're going to have, and we couldn't have pulled this thing off without volunteers from the community. Mary Ann was the driving force on getting the volunteers, and when we had a meeting of the volunteers at Senior Place, quite frankly, I was blown away because I think we ended up with something like 170 volunteers from the community.
Fantastic.
It says a lot about Owatonna. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just to add to that, we had 372 participants from 15 states, so that was pretty interesting and so forth. And we've been offered the 2015 and 16 senior games, and we're debating on that, and we'll let you know if we decide on that.
Well, now that you know how to do that,
Yeah. I just want to touch on one other thing that Jeanette had asked, and Chris here. We did have our third annual weekend out last weekend. And just to kind of give you, this is a weekend that we promote Park and Rec Month, which is July nationally. And we had about 350 people at the movie on Friday night down at Central Park. And then on fishing at Lake Chase, we had about 125 to 130 individuals, and then we ended up with geocaching about 35 on Saturday afternoon. And then Sunday was a $2 at the water park, and we ended up with 1,258 participants there. So it was a very successful weekend again, so thank you.
thank you. And congratulations and thank you for the work you did with the senior games. With that, we will move on to the next item is a proposal to issue bonds, and we'll go to Chris with that.
Thank you, Les. We have Todd Hagan here from Ehlers and also Rhonda, and I'll have him introduce the item.
Great. Thank you, Chris, Rhonda, Mayor, council members. Todd Hagan from Ehlers and Associates, your bond consultant this time, I guess. I was here last on June 18th to set up the bond sale for the projects that are being considered, the 2013 street and utility improvements and East Broadway street improvements, some various capital equipment, and some public improvements and tax increment financing district number 3-6, Viricon project. Keep my promises, came back today with some bids, all right, because we bid this thing out. That gives the council some accountability, right, of throwing this thing out and seeing who all is interested in buying these bonds. We were here last at about $3,925,000 worth of bonds. We had 7 interested bidders today, and I did pass out the little summary sheet on that that shows who they are. The true interest cost of the best bid is 2.13%, and that's about 2 basis points lower than my estimate, even though the market went up about 62 basis points nationally. And if you look at the very end of that thing, you can see the graphs going up, and that's I don't know how long they're going to go up or if they go down or whatever, but you're hitting at a pretty nice point, and 2.13% over 10 years is a pretty good interest rate. Northfield had a good sale today too, and Lakeville yesterday. So everybody's getting around the 6 bids or 7 bids, and that's pretty good. Pretty same size type of municipalities. Go down the line here on the bidders. Stifel Nicholas out of Denver, Colorado, is the best bid at the 2.12 or 3%. Baird then was second. They went in with United Bankers Bank out of Bloomington, and that's a bank for banks. We can't bank there, but banks bank there. And they had a correspondent bank locally here in Owatonna, Community Bank of Owatonna. And I just want to mention that. I want to thank, the local participation in that second bid. We call that the cover bid. Didn't win, but came in second and pretty close, as a matter of fact. So I really want to thank, again, the local participation here for Community Bank of Owatonna. And then there was one, the third one was Bosk out of Milwaukee. And flipping the page here, Piper Jaffrey, we've heard of those folks out of Minneapolis. FTN Financial out of Memphis, Tennessee, and another one out of Memphis called Raymond James, and UMB out of Kansas City. So that sort of does it for all the bids. Looks like all those bidders bid with a premium, and we'll kind of go through that. You received a premium bid on this bond issue, so they actually offered more for the bonds than we needed. And we've got this bond issue pretty tight with enough contingencies that we actually lowered the bond issue by $80,000. By doing that, that kind of burns that yield down a little bit to kind of where we were back on June 18th. So kind of a non-event, basically, as far as the interest rates are concerned. So we hit it right on the mark, I feel. So they didn't take any fee for this up front, and they're going to reoffer this at a premium to the world out there. It's easier to sell a 2% bond than it is a 0.5 or 0.75% bond. So it's just a way for them to get the bonds marketed quickly and off their plate and moved on so they can bid on somebody else's bond issues. So that and there was some savings on the cost of issuance a little bit, $475,000. Capitalized interest on the tax increment, the Viricon project went up a little bit by $8,000. And then the net proceeds went down a little bit. So really we trimmed 80 grand off of this thing. So now we're at $3,845,000. So hey, it's a lower bond issue. That's great. Then I do want to say that you did maintain your AA2 Moody's credit rating, and that's good too. Moody's is a tough nut to crack these days, and if you can hold on to that rating, that is an accomplishment for those folks. I'm not saying which one is better, like a Standard & Poor's or a Moody's, but really it's really difficult to maintain a rating at least especially as high as what you have. You're just 2 under the AAA, and the state doesn't even have a AAA anymore. So congratulations to Troy, and Rhonda and Chris were on the phone and for an hour and a half talking to an analyst out of Chicago. I was very familiar with Owatonna, and you folks have so much going on that we were surprised there was any doubt, but it had us hopping, all weekend long. Right, Chris? And so if you go back to a couple of the last few pages of the report, you can see of my report, you can see their report. And so really there's a nice summary, and then there's some details. But the summary is, aside from what the bond issue is funding, that the AA2 underlying rating reflects the city's history of excellent financial management and strong reserve levels, moderately sized tax base, which serves as a commercial center for the region, and an average debt burden. So the strengths, it's nice, they've got these bullet pointed, moderately sized tax base serving, as a regional economic center, strong financial management, and robust general fund reserves. Challenges are always everywhere. Recent declines in property values, they seem to be going up. We did get some projections from Steele County at the 11th hour, and those seem to be going up, so you seem to be in the positive territory for 2014, only estimates at this point. And then if you go to the back, there's some details there, and you can read that at your leisure. And you go to the last page of this report, I think this is just kind of nice to see from a third party what could change the rating up is sustained expansion of the city's tax base. You guys are doing a lot of that. You're one of the communities that is actually, there is some growth here, especially in the commercial sector. An improved demographic profile. Yeah, we could all make more money, right? So that would help. And then the change in rating down would be, declines in property values and erosion of the liquidity and the reserves and stuff. So it's really, it's really important to keep the reserves up and not spend those down too quickly without any kind of plan to replenish them. So So that is what the takeaway, I guess, from that bond rating is. Again, you can see the graphs on the last few pages. There are a few, and I know we've been looking at a refinancing, and obviously that's not working, and it doesn't look like it's going to work for a while. So we'll just, keep monitoring those types of things, and really we're at that 45, 50-year low is just sort of going away now. So, we're at really the bottom of the rate scale, and I do have the 30-year one and then that 2-year snapshot, which sort of is more of a detailed depiction of the graph. It's just more of a dramatic show of that, so you can kind of see where we are in the world. So I mean, you guys, good projections, I guess, on everybody's part. No surprises today on the bond issue. Yet the trend is again going up. More than Minnesota credits are always pretty stable, reliable. The nation likes to bid on Minnesota bonds. They're both federally and state tax exempt, so in Wisconsin it's different, in some states it's not a double barrel deal like that, so they really like to bid on the solid conservative Minnesota bonds. I know that they get paid off. So any questions? I think that's my summary. I'll take care of the details after this. The bond issue closes on August 15th, and that's when all the money heads over to the city by wire, and you can spend it at that time. Question, sir? Yeah.
Did Lakeville and Northville go the same low bidder as ours was? Or?
Oh, that's a good question. I think, if I glanced at Northville, it might have either been Stiefel or it might have been Baird. So it was either the cover. So, but that really varies, too, who you're going to get. It's just who their customers are, and the length of the bonds, and how big those block sizes are, and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it was pretty active today, yesterday, and today, and there's only a couple sales tomorrow. So the thing is it was a good time to sell right now. I probably would, if we would have sold earlier, I probably would have earlier than July 4th, sort of at the end of June. I would have suggested maybe we would have delayed that and had another meeting like now, because the underwriters really were having trouble unloading those low interest bonds that they've been kind of buying for 8 months. And so, good old supply and demand economics 101 says, they might not want to bid on too much until they can unload what they've got. So this really shows that, everybody's back in the game again, and rates might be a little higher, but they're all back and ready to roll. So bond sales are back on again. Yeah.
Is vehicle bonds that we bond for vehicles, is that a shorter bond than, say, streets are?
That's a 5-year.
5 years, and the street is what, 10?
Yeah.
10 years?
Yeah.
Streets are 10 years, and
On this one it is. Yeah.
vehicles is 5, and...
Yeah, and then the tax increment's 9, because that tracks the 9-year life of that particular district. So it's kind of nice, too. We bundled all three
So they're
together.
different time frames.
Yep. Internally, they're split. And in the resolution tonight, too, I've got 3 separate construction accounts, 3 separate, debt service sub-accounts, so we can track. Yep, so it's a 3-in-1 deal. Good question. Any other questions at all?
Well, thank you very much.
Great.
And next,
I've got some things I just need the mayor to sign, and something quick after this, and then Chris, that I've got here with me, and then I can be on my way, but you guys can take action.
we have to approve the motion, resolution at this point.
Yep.
So with that
I move approval.
discussion, we have a motion to approve Resolution 68-13. Do we have a second to that?
Second.
Second by Brent Svenby. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This has been approved. Thank you very
Thanks
much.
again for the business. We appreciate it.
Hey, Les,
Yes.
just one quick comment. I'd really like to thank again the staff for doing such a great job to maintain that rating. Means that we've got quality, excellent staff, so thank you.
Yes, thank you. Next item on the agenda is the financial report, and I'll do a quick recap. We have $85,323 for reissue of a check made to a wrong vendor. It went to Wenzel Plumbing instead of Wenzel Construction, so we've got that corrected. We have $130,048 for purchase of 321 Lamond Road, $27,660 for reissue of a lost check, $33,693 for Central Valley Co-op fuel purchases, $30,924 for Coca-Cola Enterprises, $23,815 for Yoakum Oil fuel purchases, $121,000 for Southeast Service Cooperative July insurance premiums, $294,826 for other expenditures, for a subtotal of $747,648. And to that, we add July 1st, Section 8 payments of $65,859 for a grand total of $813,518. What is the council's wishes?
I would make a motion to pay the bills.
A motion by Kevin Rainey to pay the bills. Do we have a second to that?
Second.
Second by Nate Dotson. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This has been approved. The next item on the agenda is a legislative update, and we have Amanda Dewar from the coalition here to speak to us.
Want to grab that one switch over there?
All right. Thank you, everybody, for allowing me to visit tonight. Always nice to be back in Owatonna. For the few of you that I haven't met before, I'm Amanda Dewar with the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities. I do the transportation lobbying for the CGMC, and I'm also the one who sends the millions of emails that you can get throughout the legislative session. I'm here tonight just to provide a little summary of the 2013 legislative session and just a little preview of what's ahead. But first, a little bit about the CGMC. We represent 83 cities across greater Minnesota, and we provide advocacy in the areas of local government aid and property taxes, economic development, annexation and land use, environmental regulation, and transportation. Going into the 2013 session, there were some changes and challenges from 2012. With the election results, we saw the control of the legislature switch from GOP to DFL, leaving all three branches of government in Democratic control. The incoming legislature was facing a $600 million budget deficit, and with that, questions of how they were going to pay back the school shift and pay for other programs that were wanting funding. So the CGMC, going into the session, had the goals that we wanted to have a balanced state budget that didn't rely on any shifts or gimmicks or cuts to programs that would result in property tax increases. We wanted to reform the LGA program and increase funding for LGA. We had a slate of economic development proposals we wanted to see passed, and then in terms of other spending, wanted to make sure greater Minnesota got a fair share of dollars in transportation and economic development and bonding. We were fortunate that Governor Dayton is a supporter of the LGA program. In 2012, he set up a working group of mayors from across the state, including several from CGMC, to look at LGA program reforms. And then when the governor released his budget proposals in January, it included a $80 million appropriation increase for the LGA program. He also proposed a new LGA formula, but that was not met with a lot of enthusiasm because it really didn't adequately measure cities' need and really quickly would have gone out of date. And also with the formula he proposed, greater Minnesota would have only got a very small chunk, about $8 million of the new $80 million. So because of these concerns, the chair of the House Property Tax Division, Representative Jim Davney, asked all the city groups, the League, Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities, Metro Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul, see if they could sit down together and come up with a LGA formula agreement. So these groups met several times in February and March and went through many different iterations of LGA formulas before they did come to an agreement. And this new LGA formula, much more stable and predictable than the current formula. Less factors go into measuring a city's need. And kind of the breakthrough that led to this agreement was an idea conceived by the CGMC was to use this additional $80 million to help fill the gap between what a city was receiving in their LGA and what their measured need was. Also part of this overall agreement between the city groups was a yearly appropriation adjustment based on inflation and a city's population growth. And this chart right here just shows the new need factors that go into the new LGA formula. And this chart shows kind of why we felt that the annual appropriation adjustment for inflation was necessary, because if your appropriation is flat and inflation increases over the time, obviously the buying power of that funding will decrease, and you'll have to turn to program cuts or property tax increases to make up the difference. So that's why we were pushing for this annual adjustment. So after the agreement was reached, the CGMC worked very hard to lobby members of the legislature, reached out to the greater Minnesota media to build support for this new LGA agreement. And at the end of the day, the new formula was passed into law, including the $80 million in additional funding, bringing the appropriation now to $507 million a year. And this new $80 million in funding is split pretty evenly between greater Minnesota and the metro area. Also in this new formula, no city will lose LGA next year's, and very few cities will lose LGA over time in this new formula as composed to current law or what the governor's plan would have happened. Unfortunately, the inflation adjustment was not passed this year, so going back every year, we'll have to keep asking for increases in LGA funding just to make sure that the buying power of this appropriation isn't eaten away. This chart just kind of shows the distribution of LGA funding. Like under the current formula, Greater Minnesota gets about 69% of the funding, and under the new formula, which is a much larger chunk of money, we get about 66%, but this is a good deal for Greater Minnesota because one of the overall goals of the formula reform was to try to bring in some of these inner ring suburbs that have been left out of the program and kind of suffered, just a way to build stability and support for the program. So overall, it is very good for Greater Minnesota. And it's good for Owatonna. This graph shows your 2013 LGA just a little over 3.1 million, and under the new formula next year, you're looking to get a little over 3.9, and had the old formula stayed on the books, you would have dropped a little bit, and had the governor's formula gone into effect, wouldn't have increased quite as much. So this was also a win for Owatonna. Also included in the tax bill, they put more funding in the property tax refund program, which primarily goes to homeowners in the metro area. There was a one-year levy limit put on cities for 2014, but that limit was pretty generous and isn't expected to impact a lot of cities. Cities and counties will be exempt from sales tax beginning January 1st of 2014, so that'll provide some real cost savings for local governments. And then also to balance the budget, some increases in other taxes. About $2.1 billion in new revenue was raised, most of that from the new fourth-tier income tax, but also some corporate taxes and tobacco taxes. The new, or the taxes on alcohol and sales tax that were discussed during the session were not passed. Now I'll shift gears to economic development, which was another priority of the CGMC. We worked to establish a new group called the Greater Minnesota Economic Development Partnership, which is a group of chambers of commerce, economic development authorities, initiative foundations, RDCs, to work together to propose and advance targeted economic development proposals for Greater Minnesota. And this year, we had 4 bills that were introduced at the legislature. We had a bill that made changes to the angel investment program, because right now about 90% of the funding for that program goes to businesses in the metro area. So we wanted to change it a bit to draw some of these private investments out to greater Minnesota. So we proposed increasing the tax credit for greater Minnesota investment from 25 to 50%. We also had the Greater Minnesota Internship Program, providing a tax credit to a business in Greater Minnesota that hired an intern from a Minnesota college or university, try to draw some of these young talented workers out to Greater Minnesota to stay there, work there. We had the jobs training tax credit, which is a way to fund training for an employee by using their income tax withholding. And then we also had the business expansion program, which we kind of called the Best of Jobs Z, which would help existing business grow and expand in the city where they're currently located. And we had a variety of tax incentives to do that, including sales tax, jobs credit, and an exemption from state commercial industrial. At the end of the day, we had 2 of these passed into law. We got $2 million a year for the internship program, and then also $7 million a year for the sales tax expansion for these expanding businesses. So these are good tools that can be used by greater Minnesota cities. Overall, there was a lot of economic development funding this year, and this just kind of outlines the lots of different programs that received funding. And then I will shift gears again to transportation. I think going into the session, there was a lot of hope that there would be a comprehensive investment package that included new revenue for roads and transit, but ultimately that wasn't to be. I think the legislators were very geared up to do that, but when the governor said that he wouldn't support a gas tax, the brakes kind of were halted on that. They tried to negotiate something out, but at the end of the day, the bill included no new revenue, but it did make some really key investments that I think will set the stage well moving forward. I mean, most importantly, for Owatonna and the region here is that it included $300 million in trunk highway bonds for the Corridors of Commerce program, and this program was really designed to address these long overdue highway projects like Highway 14, kind of fix the missing links, 2 to 4 lane expansions, build interchanges where they might be needed. And kind of Highway 14 is always used as the poster child for as a project that could benefit from this program. So this was very good for the region that we got this passed this year. There was also some general fund money put into the Southwest Corridor project because there's some federal funding on the table that they didn't want to lose. And also Greater Minnesota Transit will get a bump because they got an increased dedication from their pot of money. So about an extra $10 million will go to Greater Minnesota Transit. In the area of annexation, there was a late session push this year from townships to change the annexation by ordinance procedures and orderly annexation rules, but we fought it hard and fast and we're able to defeat it in committee, so we'll just keep on the lookout and make sure nothing like that tries to resurface again next year. And in the area of environment, for several years, the CGMC has been working to make the municipal lab certification process more simple and less costly for cities, and all those changes finally took effect this year, which was a good thing. We also supported the creation of the Greater Minnesota Parks and Trails Commission to help in planning and distributing the money that's raised by the Legacy Amendment. And also, we were pleased to see that the Legacy funding bill did split the Parks and Trails money in the favorable way for Greater Minnesota, as had been recommended. We have a few events coming up with the CGMC. As you know, last summer, Owatonna was the host of the CGMC Summer Conference. We all had a great time here. Well, next week we're going up to Bemidji, July 24th through 26th, and your own Mayor, Tom Kuntz, will be receiving an award for his great service this year, advocating for economic development and transportation. He put a lot of miles on his car coming up to the Capitol. So it'll be a good day for the city, and we're excited for that. And then we also have our fall conference in Alexandria, which is November 13th through 15th, and that's where we'll set our policy positions for the 2014 legislative session. So in conclusion, it was a very solid year for the CGMC, but there's some more work to be done moving forward. You know, we've kind of changed our strategy regarding LGA. We no longer, with the current makeup of the legislature and the new formula, have to really defend the program, but just keep on working on rebuilding it moving forward. And because the inflation adjustment wasn't passed, we'll have to keep on going back asking for more funding. Next year could potentially be a very big one for transportation. The governor's indicated that he's interested in doing a statewide investment package, so CGMC will definitely want to have a role and make sure that the bill is favorable for Greater Minnesota's transportation needs. And then also we'll continue, you know, to propose and build our economic development program and try to get some of these targeted economic development opportunities for Greater Minnesota. So with that, I can take any questions from anyone.
Thank you, Amanda. Any questions from the council? Raymond?
Just got a question. You know, they talked about the high speed, the Rochester. Has that kind of been dropped now? You know, they
Rail.
want
You know, it has not come up a lot lately. I think with the change in the makeup of the Wisconsin state government, kind of the high-speed rail discussions kind of cooled down quite a bit in the past couple of years. There's, you know, I think if there is to be a funding bill next year, I think it'll definitely maybe resurface as a topic of discussion.
Anyone else? Right, Kevin?
Thank you for what you do for us, Amanda. That's appreciated. In regards to LGA, it was nice to get the bump, and I hope that we're on a rebuilding. Do you see that happening?
Yeah, I mean, I think the formula right now, the new formula, is much more stable. So, and moving forward, and I think it sets, you know, all cities in a good place moving forward. You know, obviously, if the economy takes a turn for the worse and they have to start doing cuts and stuff again, we'll have to be in defense mode again. But, you know, as long as we continue to advocate and, you know, keep the necessary funding levels in this existing formulas, I think we're in a very good place moving forward.
Thank you. Anyone else? With that, thank you very much. And we do have our Highway 14 partnership meeting here tomorrow,
Yep.
our annual meeting, so we'll see you then.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, we'll move on to the next, the consent agenda items, and I'll open it for discussion at this point.
I'll move the consent agenda.
I apologize, I did not get this one handed out. This is item 2.7.1, the thing with regards to the quitclaim deed.
Okay, that's for John and Amanda Salmon's,
I put it into the packet, but I didn't give you a hard copy. If
Okay.
you want to just hand those down, if anybody wants a hard copy.
And that simply involves a housekeeping change. The legal description was, there was a mistake on, so it's just fixing that. And
It was Mark did an excellent purpose memo.
Thank you. Back in 1987, there was a concrete garage on the south side of Barney that encroached upon Manthe Park, and we gave a short-fused easement to the owner of the property to use it until it would expire. I believe it was to expire by its terms in 2009. In 1999, the owner of the then property conveyed it back to the city of Owatonna, but in so doing, through an error, conveyed all of the property back to the city with a quitclaim deed. And so it would appear that the city was an owner of the property, you know, in the chain of title, which we were not. So the quitclaim deed merely conveys to the new owner the property that enjoyed the easement. So it sets it right.
thank you. Any other discussion on?
President, with my involvement with the Fair Board, I will abstain from voting on item 2.21,
Okay, and that is the
the liquor license.
beer license for the fair. So you will abstain from that, but you will be permitted to vote on the rest. Okay. Any other questions on the consent agenda items?
Make a motion, we approve.
We have a motion to approve by Nate. Do we have a second to that?
Second.
Second by Greg Schultz. Any further discussion? With that, Chair will entertain a motion to approve by Nate. Aye?
Aye.
Opposed? This has been approved with all the items included. The next item on the agenda is Board and Commission recommendations 3.3.1, not smoking policy with the city parks and recreation. We'll go to Chris.
Thank you, Les. If you'll recall, the Steele County Safe and Drug-Free Coalition first met with our park board to discuss a change in our tobacco policy. The Park and Rec Board did recommend that to the council. Council held a study session, and now this item is being brought to you for your consideration. I know Tanya is here along with some other representatives, and I'm sure they'd be happy to, if you want to make any additional comments, you certainly can.
Thank you. If you'd like to make some comments, please step to the mic.
So as you recall, this is Haley Benjamin, and she's been involved with our Youth Advisory Board, and I'm not going to put her on the spot. She didn't prepare any comments for tonight, but I just thought I'd bring her up here. She might be able to answer any questions that you have. You can see in your packets that really what we presented to the Park Board was an update of Owatonna's current non-smoking policy in the parks, which really is outdated and not really, in our opinion, working very well in terms of public understanding and compliance of the policy. And so our Youth Advisory Board did a lot of study, and we feel we presented support from a wide range of community members for this idea of having our parks be tobacco-free. We did get the feedback from some council members and from our city administrator and our Park and Rec director that perhaps the signage was an issue at the last meeting, and so you'll see in your packets we did provide an alternative sign, and we would be able to provide those free of charge to the city in the number that they need, should you decide to go ahead and approve this tobacco-free parks policy.
Thank you. Thank you. Then I'll open it up for discussion to the council. Kevin.
I would like to propose that we keep the policy that's been in place for many years. You've got the policy in front of you. I would disagree with the current policy not being well understood. Having talked to Chief Hiller, we've had very minimal incidents with tobacco use near the playgrounds, at youth activities. So I don't see where there's confusion on that. I believe that the new policy as presented would be too restrictive for adults doing recreational activities, such as throwing horseshoes, fishing on the Straight River, ice fishing on Lake Colmeyer. It would be too restrictive for pavilion rentals, weddings, that type of thing. I'm still not, I don't care for the verbiage on the signs. At the very minimum, I would recommend that the policy, suggested policy, would go back to the park board. They have not even looked at this policy change yet, what it entails.
Thank you, Kevin. Anyone else? Raymond.
Well, I thought a lot about this, and I commend the committee for all the work they've done on other things that we've supported, but I really feel that it's just one more thing. We're telling people they got to do, and I just feel that I think it's working pretty good. I asked a couple board members, and have we had a lot of complaints? No. And I've been a lot of things in my life, living here 45 years, and boy, I've never heard anybody ever. I'd like to see us continue with maybe if they need to refresh that, April 6, 2012, but I really think it's working pretty good, and I will support leaving the way it is right now.
Thank you. Anyone else? Nate?
Yeah, and I would tend to agree that given the lack of, this isn't an enforceable
deal. We're not going to prevent anything. We may actually cause more problems than prevent any thing that we're trying to prevent. So given that, and also it's fairly inconsistent, if we're not going to apply this evenly, there may be some confusion there. And while there is a one of the justifications is the littering aspect. Well, that's littering. People eat candy bars with the wrappers on the floor or on the ground. People drink pop through their cans on the ground. That's all littering. While it's not uncommon to find cigarette butts on the ground, maybe we can be a little bit better about encouraging smokers to just clean up after themselves, and that would remove some of the desire to pass more ordinances or policies like this. But for that reason, I'm not in favor of making any changes to our policy either.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Les,
Greg.
I spent some time looking at this, and I commend the group for tackling this issue. I have a little hang-up with what the park board came back with. They want to okay this except in Brooktree Golf Course in the Steele County Fairgrounds Park. And I got a problem with it being okay to smoke on the golf course, but not okay to smoke if you're pitching horseshoes. It's not okay to smoke if you're fishing on Lake Colmeyer, but it's okay if you're playing softball. I think that sends a terrible message, and it opens a door I don't think we want to open. And for that reason, I just can't support it in the form it is.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to comment?
I guess I just totally agree with what Mr. Schultz has said, so it makes sense. I mean, we're not going to regulate. You can say you can't smoke on these parks, but you should be allowed. I mean, I'm not going to regulate it, so I guess I think the current policy we have is adequate.
Okay, thank you. I've discussed it with a number of people also, and to me, it's a consistency where either with what we've got right now, it's where children are playing, it's consistent throughout, where you've got it. If you're in a playground area, you don't smoke. No matter what park you're in, you don't smoke. With this new proposal, I'm still not in favor of what the sign reads. If we're going to do it, we need to do it total. We can't pick and choose where we want or where we don't want to have it enforced, because the public doesn't understand that. And I'd like to see something, but what I see now, I'm not satisfied with yet. So I guess from that standpoint, I'm going to ask for a motion. Tom?
I'll just make a comment. Just the other side of that is when they first brought their case to us and they had all those containers of cigarette butts sitting there, it is an issue.
Yes, it is.
It's a littering issue, and it is an issue, and it is a health issue. And if I look at the signs that says tobacco-free parks, we appreciate your cooperation. It doesn't say we're going to fine you. It doesn't say we're going to do anything. It just sets a message out there, don't smoke if you don't have to. So on the other side of that, if there's some issues with the language of omitting a couple places, then I'd like to have at least go back to the park board, take a look at it, and bring it back, not have it be a dead issue.
That I agree with. I think it should go back, and they should review it, look at it, and kind of take what the council has said to heart to see what they can do to correct that.
Yeah, I know Corky had mentioned he would like that opportunity if council wanted to look at passing an ordinance for the entire park system to refer it back to the park board so that they could engage with, the folks at Brooktree and the other parks so that they could participate in this.
Thank you. And with that, Chair will entertain a motion.
I would make a motion that we send it back to the park board, have them look at the recommended change, and have them come back to us with their proposal at a future date.
Okay. We have a motion by Kevin to send it back to the Park and Rec Board to review and come back with some recommended changes, and we have a second by Kevin.
Could I ask a clarifying question? Sure. You want them to look at a comprehensive no smoking policy? Is that it?
I want them to look at the whole thing.
Okay.
Got to caution you, though, as they come back with something that they feel is very good, are we going to approve that?
I would reserve judgment on that until we look at it.
Because, it's putting a lot of work on their shoulders to get it done, and, I'm guessing that they're going to expect us to.
I think that's a fair question.
Yeah.
I can reasonably say that I'm probably not going to support any further restrictions on tobacco users until we're willing to make that leap and just make cigarettes illegal. I think we've put enough restraints and restrictions on that. I'm probably not going to support much of a change.
Much of a change than what we've got right now?
Well, my point is that Park and Rec Board's going to look at this. Chances are, if they're going to create any new restrictions on tobacco use, I'm probably not going to support it.
Okay.
So if there's anyone else in the council that feels that way, we might save somebody some time. But I can tell you that's probably how I'm going to feel about it.
I would be leaning that way.
Okay. Okay. Any other comments? Okay, with that, all those in favor of the motion second by Raymond. Okay. We have a motion, send it back to have the park board look at this. With all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Thank you. We have one nay. And with that, it has been approved to send it back to the park board to look at. And again, thank you very much for the work that you have done on it, because, it's something to consider, but I guess we're looking at it a little bit different yet, so.
Thank you.
Thank you. With that, we'll move on to 3.3.2, lot split number 423 Hartle Avenue, LLC, Knutson and Huxford, and that will go to Troy.
Yes, we have a request to split the lot where Knutson and Huxford Dental Office is on the corner of 18th Street Southeast and Hartle Avenue. The purpose of the split is to split the south portion of that lot, the vacant portion, so that it may be sold. There's no immediate plans to develop that portion of the lot, but it would be sold for future development. Services can be provided or are provided to the south portion of that lot. And Owatonna Public Utilities would like to see a 5-foot utility easement on either side of that new lot line, which the applicant is willing to accept. So staff would recommend approval of this lot split as recommended by the Planning Commission with the condition that that utility easement be placed along the new lot line.
Thank you. Questions from the council?
I move we approve with the restrictions required on the side yards like Troy said.
We have a motion to approve it with the restrictions recommended. Do you have, by Raymond Trulson, do you have a second to that?
Second.
Second by Greg Schultz. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This has been approved. We'll move on down to policies. 3.6.1, update personnel policy to eliminate section 6.7, employee benefits for city computer financing program. With that, we'll go to Chris.
Thank you, Les. When the city first began offering the computer financing program, computers were much more expensive and employees were much less familiar with their use. This practice was very beneficial for the city to encourage their employees to enhance their proficiency in computers and computer applications. As the times have changed, and also with the recommendation we received from our city financial auditor that we just met with in a study session, this policy will be discontinued at their recommendation. We currently have about 14 loans outstanding. These will continue until their existing payment plans are paid in full. There's really no impact on the budget. Staff would recommend approval.
Thank you, Chris. Now, I do have a question. I think I did ask you, is when was the last loan applied for to purchase?
Oh, gosh, I'd say a couple years ago.
About 2 years ago?
Yeah.
Thank
Has
you.
there been any requests since 2 years ago?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Any other questions from the council? Great.
Just refresh my memory on why the auditors wanted has to remove this?
Well, it's a question involving use of public funds. The way the program would work is there would be a deduction from their payroll. Funds would be advanced and a deduction from their payroll until it was all paid in full. Technically, you know, your payroll, your pay isn't yours until you receive it. The city was advancing those funds up front, which is really public funds and, you know, really not a recommended practice, and one that, you know, the state auditor also recommends that we eliminate.
I guess the other question I would have is, say we had one of these programs and an employee were to quit, is there something in there that would enforce a repayment, or how, I mean, if that were to happen, how would we go about that?
Our last check, you know, we have that last check that we would be able to reserve.
And if that didn't satisfy the balance, did we have any recourse?
You know, we've never had that happen, but yeah, you bring up a good point. You know, generally when people leave, there's other payments of, you know, sick leave and or not sick leave, but vacation, and that's usually a sizable check that could be deducted.
So it would be covered at that point.
Right. So I'd say given the recommendations of the auditors, I'd make a motion we approve.
Okay, we have a motion by Nate to approve it as recommended. Do we have a second to that?
Second.
Second by Kevin Rainey. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This has been approved. We'll move on to miscellaneous items. 3.71, modify assessment roll to abate assessment on parcel 17-105-0501. Chris? No, let's see, that goes to Kyle.
No, actually me. I'll take that one. Council adopted an assessment roll on June 4th for the sidewalk project. There was a property located at 801 Elm Avenue North. We have a notice problem with this particular assessment. Ownership of the property transferred between the time of the preliminary assessment and the final assessment, and so there was inadequate notice for the property owner, and staff would recommend the amount for the project to be decreased by this $583.59.
Thank you. Questions from the council? Greg?
I understand what we're doing here, and there's a procedural problem. Number one, do I like it? No. I hope we take the opportunity to review our procedures to make sure this type of thing doesn't happen in the future. And I know there's always some question about when something's pending and when it's not.
And we have straightened that out in our process, and going forward, this should not happen again. You know, people make mistakes, but we have changed our processes so that, you know, should not happen again.
Okay. I'd hate to see a lot of issues like that. I was approached on one of the other things that we tabled a couple weeks ago on the utilities. You know, we keep going that somewhere we're paying the bill for it, and, you know, it's a procedural mistake, but.
Right, and the reason why we tabled on the utility issue is to make sure we were providing all of the adequate notice so that you wouldn't have an issue going forward.
And I understand that, but again, you know, when you're looking at $500 and some here, you know, they start piling up. And
I understand.
Yeah, so, Raymond.
And I think one thing people need to understand is a two-way communication. It's not all just, I mean, if people are doing something, they need to, you know, they need to tell us too. I think sometimes, well, they'll take it for granted that this will happen. No, not really. I mean, it's larger than anybody can realize how large it is. And I think realtors or people involved in all this process need to notify us sometimes of some changes are going to be right at, you know, they know the rules a little bit too. I think they need the cooperation from both ways so this, I mean, I just get a little tired saying that you guys made a mistake. Well, not really. You know what I mean? So it's a two-way. I'm just saying that they've been around a while and know the rules too, you know. So.
Right.
Okay, thank you. We looking for a motion on this? Motion to approve by Greg, second by Raymond. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This has been approved. Now we go on to 3.72, draft Steele County 5-year capital improvement plan. That will go to Kyle.
Good evening. Excuse me. Currently, Steele County has published their 5-year road and bridge capital improvement plan and are taking written comments up through a public hearing they're holding on July 23rd at 7:15 in the county boardroom. In reviewing this plan, staff felt that there were some sections of county roadway within the city limits of Owatonna that should possibly be addressed. Currently in the plan, only Dane Road from Maple View Place to the east 3/4 of a mile is the only section of roadway within the 5-year plan. And we just wanted to comment to the county that Hoffman Drive from State Avenue to North Street is in poor condition. Oak Avenue from Cedar to Holly is in poor condition. Oak Avenue, Holly to Bridge, that's the main section of Oak. The concrete pavement, as you know, has some issues there. Kenyon Road, Dane Road to 26th Street Northeast is something that's on the long-range plan. 26th Street intersection, this would be the intersection with I-35, Mayo Clinic, and County Road and County Road 45, and then East Main Street, a traffic study for safety improvements. We've had some issues with crosswalks in that area, and that's a county section. So, and then new this year through the legislature, the county can enact a half-cent sales tax, and I don't know if they'll do that or not, but we just felt that it was worth commenting that currently they do not pay for curb and gutter, parking lanes, and some other associated items that if they did enact the half-cent sales tax for roadway funding, they should consider including the entire street in their cost, or what they pay for. So if you have any questions or any suggestions, we're certainly open.
Okay, and this request here contains that with the 0.5% sales tax, that those items be included when they do a bill or a road.
It's the recommendation that we're making, that they would include the curb and gutter and the parking lane.
Okay. Raymond.
When will we know they would accept these ideas? I mean, will they come back to it and say, yeah, we agree with you and we'll accept some of these items, or will they just?
I guess I don't know if anybody's planning on attending the public hearing on the 23rd, but we would certainly submit in writing before that.
Okay.
Yeah, they're asking for our responses by, the 18th if possible, and then they're having a public hearing on the 23rd, so.
July?
Pardon me?
July?
Yep.
Of July,
That's
yes.
pretty soon.
Next week.
Yeah.
Nate?
Kyle, would they're still in the process of their turnback issue with Old Highway 14, correct?
Correct.
And would that, once that issue is resolved, would that tie into that Hoffman Drive? Likely when they figure out, because they need to bring that back up to standard anyway, would that be included in that probably, or is that going to be a separate issue?
If I remember correctly, the section of Hoffman Drive from State Avenue to the west is included in the turnback funds.
Okay.
There really wasn't much contention on what was going to be done there. That was going to be reconstructed to the off-ramp from 35. And then they were going to do concrete pavement rehabilitation from I-35 out to 24th Avenue Northwest. I think, and I'm not real familiar with the what's going on the turnback, but I think it was more in the county that the issues were with what the state was proposing in the county.
But the repairs that need to be done, they might be undertaken then once they get...
They would be.
Yeah, okay.
So it would just be from State Avenue to the east up over the railroad tracks that we feel is in poor condition.
Thank you. And any other questions?
Kyle, do we have like a cost estimate for these recommendations that we're
Not at this,
discussing to them?
not at this time.
Is it something you think that would be helpful if we would do something for that, for the meeting?
Possibly. It'd be difficult to get done by then. We can,
I'm sorry, Brent,
I just asked Kyle if there was an estimate of cost of these improvements that we recommend. If you look at their CIP, all the roadway projects that they have spelled out in it, they all have costs, estimated costs with them. So if we're providing a list of roads that we feel that they should be improving, that'd be helpful if we would provide them with some type of cost that maybe we're looking at currently if they adopted those, our improvements, or our recommendations.
okay. Very good idea. Anyone else?
I'll make a motion that we approve just to get at least get on the radar that they see the concerns that we have.
We have a motion by Nate Dotson. We have a second by Raymond Trulson to approve this as recommended. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This has been approved. Thank you. And with that, we move on down to public comment. Anyone in the audience wish to speak, please come to the microphone and sign in, and ask you to limit it to 2 minutes on items not on the agenda at this point. Seeing none, we'll move on to council comment, and we'll start with Nate.
Try and stay cool.
Thank you. Greg.
Nothing to add tonight.
Dave.
Nothing more.
Thank you. Kevin.
Nothing more for tonight.
Brett.
Nothing this evening.
Raymond.
Nothing.
Chris.
Nothing.
Tom.
Nothing.
And I've got nothing. So with that, we'll look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Yeah, one by Kevin and Raymond. We'll take one as a first, one as a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting adjourned.
Nice.